deal for them to do simply because of the wages that are on offer. However, if you look at the relationship between Manchester United and Borussia Dortmund, it's quite good. Because last season, you'll remember, they all organised the deal whereby Jadon Sancho went from Old Trafford to Borussia Dortmund. And look how well that worked out for Sancho. And in the end, look how well that worked out for United and, of course, for Borussia Dortmund as well. As far as Rashford's camp is concerned, we do know what's been happening. All of the communication so far has been done via them. It hasn't really been club to club yet. And they have been speaking to clubs in Italy, to clubs in Spain as well. As far as United are concerned, if they are to allow this guy to leave, they would prefer a straight loan. Get him playing football, get him to raise his market value, and then they can reassess Marcus Rashford's future in the summer. And while United accept that any kind of loan deal will involve them paying a huge portion of Marcus Rashford's wages, we'll talk about this a bit later on, but there are certain ways you can do these kind of deals where you can incentivise the wages, incentivise the performances, whereby the club who's allowing someone like Marcus Rashford to leave can still get good money for him.
James, does Rashford need to go abroad? Is that going to be better for him than staying here, playing for another Premier League club?
I think you'd have to say yes, really. It feels like it's a player that just needs rejuvenation in his life. He needs a fresh start. He needs a fresh focus. A lot of attention here in the UK, as we know, by the British media. We're talking about him here. He's filled the back pages for weeks now, it feels like, certainly since he decided to do that interview with Henry Winter. The opportunity to go abroad seems like that's a right fit. AC Milan, as Dharmesh mentioned originally, are interested in him, want to do a deal for him and have an opportunity to sign him. They've got an opportunity to sign one UK or Albanian player in this window. Now, that sounds really strange, but that's all down to non-EU players and Serie A regulations that they have. They can only make a certain amount of signings. So per season, normally they can sign 3 non-EU players plus 1 player from Britain or Albania. Now, that varies depending on what clubs have, how many non-EU players they've got in the squad already. So for AC Milan, for example, they made 2 signings in the summer. That was all they could make. They've only got this one little signing available to them, which is a British player. Hence why Marcus Rashford is one of the names mentioned. And it seems like that would be a good fit for him.
So if it is Marcus Rashford to Milan, where does that leave Kyle Walker?
Well, what I was saying there, it means Kyle Walker won't be going to Milan. And it feels like AC Milan now are focusing their attention on a forward and on potentially bringing in Marcus Rashford. There isn't room for 2 British players. Now, I mentioned the regulations. If AC Milan were to sell a non-EU player, that wouldn't open up an opportunity to bring in another player. It doesn't work like that in Serie A according to the regulations. So for Kyle Walker, AC Milan might not be the destination. There's plenty of other destinations for a 34-year-old experienced right-back who's won pretty much everything, certainly everything at club level in the game, and the likes of Inter Milan, Bayern Munich, Saudi Arabia clubs would be interested. I've read a report that Real Madrid might be interested in bringing him on loan for the remaining 6 months of the season. There will be opportunities for Kyle Walker in this window, there's no doubt about it.
OK. Well, as things stand, Walker remains a City player. Pep Guardiola hasn't decided if he'll feature against Brentford tomorrow, but did reveal that defensive reinforcements are a priority in this window.
Just on Kyle Walker, is there any update at all?
No.
And is he going to be included in your squad for tomorrow?
No, no news.
Will he be in your squad tomorrow?
Oh, we'll decide afternoon, after training.
If he doesn't play, who plays right back? Rico?
I said what I said. I don't go into add anything else. I don't have any news, so he's Brentford in my mind.
Again, the development since I last spoke to you about this is that obviously what's happened with Kyle and potentially leaving. Does that mean that defensive reinforcements for you become the priority this month?
When we are from the beginning of the season, it was the back in the middle, yeah. Yeah, there's a position up front. We are more or less okay. But back all the season, we struggle a lot, yeah.
Struggling at the back, he says. They've been linked with Abdul Kadir Kusanov. What's happening with that deal?
Yeah, we understand he's due to arrive in the UK to complete this deal, a deal worth around £33.5 million. 20-year-old defender Interesting with him. In 2023, Lens signed him for €100,000. They're potentially selling him for 33.5 million. Incredible profit, a young player. It's probably not necessarily a signing for right this second. Having said that, because of City's injury issues, the likes of Ruben Dias, John Stones, even Akanji, Ake, both have injury issues this season. There certainly could be opportunities for game time, but this is one that looks to be someone for the future. And that's something, look, we're going to see a lot of from Manchester City. We talked about bringing in a forward in Mamouche, talking about a centre-back, a young centre-back. This is a period now for Manchester City where they're going to have to change their squad around. They're going to have to
just said
rebuild.
he wants people in the middle. He wants midfielders
That's
as well.
That's going to have to be next on the list as well. And when they're missing, you know, we're talking about it earlier, any club missing a player like Rodri, there's a glaring hole in that centre of the park. And there's a lot of experience in the Manchester City side, but there's also a lot of age on the other side of probably where Pep Guardiola wants his squad to be. So again, if they manage to get Mamouche over the line, if they manage to get Kusanov over the line, there's still plenty of time in this window, and Manchester City got plenty of funds still to spend, and a midfielder will certainly be an area they'll be looking at.
Definitely keep an eye on that. What about, let's go back to Manchester United. Antony, is he leaving?
So we told you last week that clubs from Spain and Greece had approached Manchester United over the potential signing of Antony. We think it would probably be a loan deal at this stage. Well, I can tell you that the clubs that we've been told now are Real Betis and Olympiacos, who have made those inquiries. Now, in fairness to Antony, he's actually been featuring in nearly all of Ruben Amorim's squad, but he still hasn't started a Premier League game under Ruben Amorim. But not just that, he hadn't started a Premier League game under Erik ten Hag this season. So it seemed like Manchester United were edging towards, let's see if we can do some sort of deal to raise the market value. Clearly, United are not going to get anywhere near, if and when they decide to sell him permanently, the 80-odd million pounds that they spent on him to Ajax, 2 summers ago. That simply isn't going to happen. But it's clear now that they will consider offers for Antony. As I said, the most likely idea would be a loan. And it's interesting because Real Betis have recently sold one of their wingers, Hassan Diao, to Como, which is why there might be a space and Antony could be the one to fill it.
James, I want to talk Aston Villa. What are they up to?
Yeah, Aston Villa making moves, should we say, in this window. Donyell Malen, actually, news reaching us earlier today. I'm just going to turn my page over. Borussia Dortmund actually posted this on their social media. They announced that he's not part of the travelling squad for their next game against Holstein Kiel, and that's tomorrow night. They say they've allowed the player to leave for talks. Now, we understand that Aston Villa have agreed a deal to sign the forward from Borussia Dortmund in a deal worth around £20 million. 25-year-old Dutchman has played in 14 Bundesliga games this season, appeared for the club in the Champions League, 5 goals this season. You feel like it's a signing that Unai Emery would be looking at to get into the squad and certainly offer competition for places on those wide areas. But, yeah, big move for Aston Villa straight away in the window, trying to get the deals done as early in January as they possibly can.
I'm just picking up what James is saying there. While Donyell Malen could be on his way in to Villa Park, we're still waiting for confirmation that Jadon Philogene has officially left Aston Villa for Ipswich Town. Now, Ipswich still remain hopeful of completing that deal. We were expecting it to go through last week, but there's still, I'm told, some details to be ironed out before that deal can be formally rubber stamped. He's passed his medical already. He did that last week. He's already agreed terms on a 4.5-year contract. The fee is worth over £20 million, including performance-related add-ons. And this is a player that there's been a long-standing interest in. Ipswich actually agreed a deal with Hull City in the summer, and they thought they were going to get him then. But Aston Villa had the option to trigger a matching clause, which they did, hoping that Philogene would live up to the potential that Unai Emery saw in him. And Unai Emery was pretty honest. He says, I don't think he has, so maybe he does need to move on. So they've decided Malen is on his way in and Philogene could be on his way out. Hasn't really worked out for him at Villa, but we're just waiting now for these details to be ironed out before Ipswich can officially call him an Ipswich Town player.
I've got to say, the club made a decent profit in 6 months on him and will make a good profit on him in 6 months. And the Malen deal is not in terms of Philogene's out, Malen comes in. Malen will offer potential competition, and Unai Emery want him to play, not necessarily sit in the background like Philogene was doing this season.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have news from all 20 clubs in our Premier League wrap next. And Enzo Maresca admits that he feels shame over the way one of his players has been treated. That's coming next in a moment.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. It's time now to go around the clubs. Dharmesh, Take it away. That's what
James.
you wanted, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks very much. It was always going to be a reactive window for Arsenal. They're now waiting to find out the extent of the knee injury suffered by Gabriel Jesus in yesterday's FA Cup penalty shootout defeat against Manchester United.
Yeah, Aston Villa have agreed a deal worth just over £20 million with Borussia Dortmund for forward Daniel Marlon, and Dortmund have left him out of tomorrow's squad.
Valencia have agreed a loan deal for Bournemouth right-back Max Aarons.
Borussia Dortmund, they're going to be the talk of tonight, I think, are interested in Brentford striker Kevin Schade, but Thomas Frank has insisted he's not interested in selling anyone this month.
Brighton boss Fabian Herzler has full confidence in the recruitment team making the right calls in this window. Could Evan Ferguson, though, leave on loan?
Borussia Dortmund, see, told you, are in talks with Chelsea over the potential loan deals of Carney Chukwuemeka and Renato Vega.
Crystal Palace have triggered the release clause of Millwall's Roman Esse. Esse is not in the squad for tonight's FA Cup tie against Dagenham and Redbridge.
Everton want to sign Leon winger Ernest Numama. Discussions are ongoing.
Fulham boss Marco Silva has dismissed reports linking Andreas Pereira with Brazilian club Palmeiras amid reports of a second bid worth £20.5 million for the midfielder.
Talk about this earlier. Ipswich Town remain hopeful of completing a deal for Aston Villa forward Jadon Philogene.
Leicester City are closing in on the signing of Parma right-back Woyo Koulibaly. They also want to sign a left winger and a central back.
Kilmarnock have completed the loan signing of Liverpool right-back Calvin Ramsey for the rest of the season.
Manchester City held further talks with Eintracht Frankfurt over Omar
Mamouche?
What is it?
Mamouche.
Omar Mamouche today.
We were singing the song, Mamouche, Mamouche, Mamouche is on fire.
A deal could be completed in the next couple of days, unlike me.
AC Milan are expected to formally approach Manchester United over a deal for Marcus Rashford. He was left out of the squad in yesterday's FA Cup victory against Arsenal.
Newcastle boss Eddie Howe is still hopeful keeper Martin Dubravka will sign a new contract at the club.
Nottingham Forest striker Taiwo Awoniyi is one striker being considered by West Ham.
Southampton will only consider a permanent sale of forward Kamaldeen Sulemana amid interest from Ajax, Genoa and Nantes.
Tottenham centre-back Alfie Dorrington has chosen to join Aberdeen on loan until the rest of the season.
West Ham United boss Graham Potter said it would be logical to sign a forward this window. Mikel Antonio, Jared Bowen, Crescencio Somerville and Nicholas Füllkrug are all injured.
A lot of injuries. And finally, Wolves striker Mateus Cunha is expected to stay at Wolves as he continues to consider his options over a long-term contract at the club.
Now, the focus at Chelsea is going to be outgoings this month. Ben Chilwell and Renato Vega, two who could leave. Here's Enzo Maresca.
Chilwell is top fullback, probably doing that kind of job up and down, and give him the opportunity in the past to win titles, to be with the international team. But I struggle to see Ben doing different kind of things. At the moment, I'm not aware that there is an agreement for Renato. The only thing I can say is that yesterday he was here with us working. Today he will be here with us. So that means that at the moment it's our player, and then we see if something happens.
I presume he also wants to play regularly as well, does he?
Yeah, but I said many times I also want the long hair. But we have more than 20 players, 25 players, and they all want to play, but it's not possible.
So, James, Maresca says he isn't aware of any talks. Is that your understanding?
Managers always say they're not aware of any talks, or they completely dismiss us when we ask those questions in press conference. Now, my understanding through Sky Germany, they're reporting Borussia Dortmund actually opened talks with Chelsea over a potential loan deal for Renato Vega. Now, Dortmund want that deal to include certain options to buy the player. Might not necessarily be an obligation or a permanent transfer in this window, but certainly in the future. Now, we understand Vega is said to have agreed in principle with the idea to join Dortmund. Now, let's not forget this is a player that joined the club just in the summer. Hasn't played too much. I think about 7 appearances in the Premier League so far. Interesting what Maresca was talking about him and saying, well, actually, we are developing him. We think we know his best position. He's still young. He's still, 21 years old. Lots to learn, lots to improve upon. But this is also Chelsea. We know how many players they've got in their squad. And if the right offer is there for one of their players, then never really been too reluctant to sell. So we'll have to wait and see.
What about Ben Chilwell? Why hasn't there been more interest in him?
Yeah, Ben Chilwell's an interesting one. It's almost, it feels really bad saying this, but it's almost a player you forget is still at Chelsea. He's made one appearance this season. That was in the EFL Cup. We know he's had injury problems throughout his time at Chelsea, but only a couple of years ago, he signed a 2-year extension to his 5-year contract. So he's under contract still for another 2.5 years at Chelsea. He's paid over £200,000 a week. So it's a lot of money that Chelsea actually would probably like to
So
take
is that the key? He's paid so much. Actually getting him out of the club is going to be difficult because people won't be able to match that.
I think it'll be the key for the player, making sure that it's the right opportunity for him. He's 28 years old. Has he got ambition to still play football? I can imagine he definitely has, knowing what the player is like. The deal in terms of the transfer fee that Chelsea would expect, I wouldn't expect it to be too high, so I don't think that will be an issue for any club willing to look at this player. But it's a player that Enzo Maresca, you heard him in his press conference, he wasn't particularly complimentary, really. He said he feels a shame about it, but then went on to say all he pretty much does is go up and down, which to me sounds pretty disrespectful from a manager to one of his players.
You say that, but for journalists, when we're at press conferences with Enzo Maresca, you know, if you ask him a question, he's going to be completely honest. And he's maintained from the start when he's been there, with the massive squad that he's had, he's almost said, I've got 2 sets of players that I need to keep happy. But there are certain players that aren't going to have a future here. So it's clear, and it happens in football. Those players will have to get moved on. Now, with regard to Ben Chilwell, because Chelsea have made it clear that they're willing to let him go, if you are then a club that wants to bring in Ben Chilwell, you can just say, well, we can probably get a good deal here. Because you're talking about the wages that Ben Chilwell is on. If a club wants to go in with a loan deal of some sort, they'll think, well, you can stump up the majority of the wages because whatever we pay will be less money than you're paying at the moment. So, you know, they could go in with a cheeky, we'll take him on loan, but we'll pay 30% of the wages. Can you cover the rest? And Chelsea, because they want Chilwell out, might have to consider offers that they might not have had to consider a little while ago. But because the squad is in the state that it's in, and Enzo Maresca is now streamlining it to what he wants, and he's decided these players are just not going to have a future here, that's what's going to happen for Chelsea now. There's going to be a situation where they're going to have to do deals that maybe aren't really that beneficial to the club, but in the longer term, it will help them out.
I think for a new manager, bear in mind, he's still a new manager at Chelsea. He's come in, he's got quite a bit of power he's been given, a lot of responsibility.
But he's also going well. He's
going well, so he's earned that faith and trust that his decisions actually are working in which personnel he wants into the side in which he doesn't. So, yeah, it's no surprise really to see that Ben Chilwell won't necessarily...
Who was that Chelsea player who was there for years they couldn't get rid of? But
Winston
Bogarde.
That's it. Loved him. Right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, has the last week changed Arsenal's plans for the window? And could Tottenham and Manchester United miss out on a forward? That and more to come. See you in a moment.
So far. This is an update from the Palmeiras president, Leila Pereira, and she said that Manchester City have made an official offer for the defender, but it fell short of their valuation. But she says negotiation between the clubs continues. Now, we understand Palmeiras have demanded around £40 million for the centre-back, who turned 19 on Sunday. Now, Manchester City not prepared to pay over the asking price or over the market value of the player, shall I say. This is a player who signed a new contract in the summer till 2028. And the quote that's come in, it says that there was an official proposal from Manchester City, but we are negotiating. I will not talk about the amount, but it did not reach what Palmeiras want. I'm not in a hurry. Vita still has a long contract. We're talking if we reach a value that's good for Palmeiras, for the athlete and for Manchester, OK. But now nothing has been decided. So they're relaxed about the situation. But Manchester City are making moves in this transfer window.
Just talking about Palmeiras, Leila Pereira, their president, who James was just quoting from, she's actually been speaking about Andreas Pereira as well. Remember, we've been reporting that Palmeiras have had a couple of bids, the first of which was definitely rejected. The other one was on the table, hasn't been officially rejected as far as we know yet, but they are still interested in Andreas Pereira. Leila Pereira said this: I would like things to happen more quickly, but it doesn't depend only on Palmeiras. We are in the fight. As I told you, we are doing our best. It is a very great desire of ours. We have been involved in this matter for a long time. I would like it to be resolved as soon as possible. We have an interest in this athlete. I think that might have been like a Google Translate. They're interested in Pereira.
Got it. We've been saying quite a bit that Tottenham and Manchester United are looking for a striker. Are they in danger, James, of both missing out?
Look, there's a little bit of danger when they're looking at a player and potentially another club comes in. And we're talking about this man, Randall Kolo-Muani, again, been the talk of the transfer window pretty much daily. His name seems to be mentioned, but that's because moving parts to this are happening daily. Now, we understand Juventus are making a maximum effort possible to get the player on loan this season, and that's because they want to jumpstart those attempts by the likes of Tottenham, AC Milan and Manchester United in their attempts to get this player. Now, again, just talking about this player, PSG signed him for close to 90 million euros only 18 months ago. He's fallen out of favour, wasn't in the matchday squad for the last 3 matches. They're resigned to letting him go, whether this window or the summer, but it seems like the race is hotting up for his signature. Tottenham are not out of this race yet at all. They are interested in the player, and a forward is their priority this window, but competition is hotting up for him. OK,
that's Spurs. Tough week for Arsenal. Lost to Newcastle in the first leg of the Carabao Cup, then beaten on penalties by Manchester United in the FA Cup yesterday. And after 49 shots and just 1 goal in their last 2 games, there's been 1 talking point.
I don't think Arsenal have the X factor in the centre forward place.
Havertz is not a number 9. You need an out-and-out number 9.
I do think if you are going to be a team that competes for both the Champions League and the Premier League, I think you do need a goal scorer within your team.
I would be looking at the players with a release clause, the likes of Nico Williams, maybe Sesko.
I've always felt they were an attacker short of a world-class level.
There you have it from the experts. They need a forward. Are they going to get a forward?
Look, this has been the constant noise surrounding Arsenal. And it's not just been this season, it's been going for the last season or 2. They need to bring in a striker. Let's just break this down first of all. They're first of all awaiting the extent of Gabriel Jesus' injury. It looks like a bad one. Mikel Arteta in his news conference yesterday after that game against Manchester United says it doesn't look good. It's his knee, and the way that he was in pain, he's not holding out much hope that it's not going to be an unserious injury. So there's a problem there, first of all. But Arsenal aren't a club that panics, and they certainly won't be panicking in this transfer window.
The fans want them to panic. The fans want them to get on with it.
They don't want them to panic, though, because at the end of the day, you can go into a transfer window and sign the wrong player, and then what? Oh, they've signed a striker, but it hasn't worked. They have to make sure that it's the right player as well.
Pepe, for example, 70 million plus for him, didn't work out, and it cost Arsenal in transfer windows to come as well. So.
But what should be said here, what I have been saying, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, this January transfer window was always going to be a reactive one. And I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
It's time to react.
Exactly.
It is time to react because of the injuries that they've got. Make no mistake about it. Mikel Arteta, first of all, has said we need to look at what is within the squad, number one. Let's see what players we have within the squad. They have got players who can play along the front line. Raheem Sterling has just returned from injury. Ethan Nwaneri, who is out at the moment, is going to be back sooner rather than later. Having said that, it is clear Arsenal will have their targets. They're a big club. They are going to want to go into a transfer window. They have spent big money in transfer windows in the past. But they are looking at both short-term deals and long-term deals. And the way I'm interpreting this, and if it is a long-term target, I would guess that Arsenal would want a player, if they're going to spend big money, to go straight into the team and improve the team, or at least be real big competition to who is already there. If it's more of a short-term option, which hasn't been ruled out either, and they're exploring this situation, then I think it might be one of those players who will come in and reduce the gap in quality from when a first-team player is out and when a squad player comes in. So just to strengthen the squad. So both of those eventualities are still possible. The other eventuality is still that they may not go into the market and sign somebody. That is still possible because what Arsenal want to do is, yes, they do want to recruit, but they want to recruit the right player. And if the right player is not available, there's no point going into the window.
Listen, after last night, Arsenal fans going absolutely berserk. If Manchester City can go out and find a forward, why can't Arsenal? Can you understand, James, why Arsenal fans are so frustrated?
Completely understand. If you look at Mikel Arteta's track record since he's arrived at the club, Gabriel Jesus, the only out-and-out striker, and technically you'd probably say he's not necessarily a full-on striker, is he? He plays out wide a lot, so he hasn't really done that. He's bolstered his squad elsewhere. Now, what I would say, look, to counteract a lot of the talk at the moment, last season, Arsenal, without a striker, so to speak, scored 5 goals fewer than Manchester City, who had the most lethal striker in the Premier League. Season before, 6 goals fewer than Manchester City, who won the league. The goals have been spread around the side. Now, there's always going to be focus after you've read the stats. Was it 40-odd shots, only 1 goal in the last 2 games? It's not great. It's not a great record, but Kai Havertz, yes, OK, he's had a difficult week, so to speak. He might not be necessarily that number 1 striker, but he still scored 7 goals this season. Let's talk about Benjamin Sesko. He scored 7 goals this season as well. So it goes back to what Diamond says about the right player. All Arsenal fans will want a striker, absolutely. They want that clinical player. And actually, the word clinical is something that Mikel Arteta has spoken about so much, particularly over the last couple of years. And every time I've sat down and spoke to him, it always crops up. And he always demands out of his players to be more clinical. They have proved over the last couple of seasons, they've done that pretty well in comparison to Manchester City. This year, it seems to be just highlighting it that much more. But wanting a striker is one thing. Getting a striker is a completely different thing. And again, do Arsenal fans want Arsenal to rush this and just grab someone in?
But it's not a rush. This has been window after window after window. We've spoken about Arsenal getting a striker.
They will be looking at that. This will be in their plans. As Dharma said, they do have long-term plans where they're constantly reviewing and looking at the availability of certain players. Now, that might be a Victor Gyökeres, who's lighting it up for Sporting, potentially looking at his next move, but that unlikely will be this month. But if they're getting word that maybe a player like Gyökeres is available in the summer, they're going to wait until the summer to get him. So there needs to be an element of
a better chance of winning the Premier League. Manchester City, who've dominated it 6 out of the last 7 years, are off it. Arsenal fans must be thinking, this is our chance. Get someone who can stick it in the net. And they haven't done it.
Totally agree. If they can do, they will do. But if that player's not available and they can't get the deal done, then they can't get the deal done. They certainly should be trying, though. I totally agree with you on that. They should be trying. They have got an opportunity, and they are trying. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, we're not saying they're not dipping into the
Arsenal
market.
aren't just sitting. They aren't just let the transfer window elapse. We're not looking. Of course they're looking. Every big club looks, but at the end of the day, when a season finishes, no club worth their salt is going into the summer thinking, do you know what? Let's go massive in January. They don't do that. They look summer transfer windows 1, 2, 3 years ahead. And that's what Arsenal will be doing. Let's not forget, when Mikel Arteta came to the club, they were finishing 8th in the season he arrived. I think 8th in his first full season. Tottenham pipped them to the Champions League the following season. everyone was up in arms. He's turned them into title challengers. And now, yes, the argument is, what is the next step? Is it to get a striker? And it could be something else. Because the way that Arsenal play, you might say, well, Erling Haaland, you stick him in the team and Arsenal win the league. That's one argument. That could happen. It could happen. I'm not saying that that's guaranteed to happen because Arsenal and Mikel Arteta have decided to play in a certain way. So if Erling Haaland, and Roy Keane is highly critical of Erling Haaland sometimes, yes, he's the best finisher he's ever seen. But build-up play, it's very important for Mikel Arteta and the players who play in that front three. So all of this will have to be taken into consideration when Arsenal are looking at the players that they want to recruit for the club.
Yeah, because the forward for Arsenal works incredibly hard for the team. They lead the press from the front.
Which Havertz does, doesn't he?
Which Havertz does very, very well. So that works, and that's why he fits the system. So that's why an Erling Haaland might not necessarily work at Arsenal, which to some people might sound really strange. But actually, Arteta needs his players to be working from the front. And we know Erling Haaland doesn't necessarily do that too much, certainly consistently throughout the game. One thing that could be interesting for Arsenal might not be necessarily a striker, but I do feel... I know you mentioned about forward options and wide player options. I still feel they're very light. I think they were always light on the right-hand side in particular if Bukayo Saka did get injured, which is proven this window. Obviously, you mentioned Ethan Nwaneri, but he's still a 17-year-old young lad with very little experience. So to put pressure on him as, oh, we'll wait for him to come back and he's in the team and everything's okay, I think that's too much. What we've seen for Arsenal is goals have been spread around the team quite a lot. And actually, if they can find an attacker who can play all those front three positions, then that might be an option that they'll be looking at.
Very quickly, what I will say, I know there's lots of talk about PSR, and there's a report coming out tomorrow.
Yeah.
As far as we know, Arsenal are very confident of complying within that and in a great position. And people will say, well, if that's the case, go and spend some money. But there are other mitigating factors where they might not think January is the time to do that. One of them is, yes, they will be well within the parameters of Premier League profit and sustainability rules, but they also have to comply with UEFA's rules as well. So they have to keep an eye on both of those areas. I mentioned about recruiting in the summer already, but also, if you look ahead to this summer, Thomas Partey and Jorginho are out of contract. Now, if they don't renew and they leave the club, there's two big holes that Arsenal will need to fill in a summer transfer window. And if the profile of player that they're looking for is on the younger side, how much money is that going to cost? And how much money do they need to keep in their mind for that summer to replace players like that? At the moment, you've got Jason Ato, the interim sporting director who took over from Edu. He's in interim charge at the moment. He is in the frame for the permanent role, but that process, as it stands, is still ongoing. So a little bit up in the air with that side of it, but to say that Arsenal aren't looking, they are. Is it a case of are they definitely going to go and get a striker in this January transfer window? If the deal is right and the player is right, they will. Otherwise, I'll wait till the summer.
James, I've got to go for a break.
Go for the break.
We'll
talk about it off camera.
Right. We're going to hear from a couple of managers next. Graham Potter of West Ham and David Moyes at Everton. What are their plans for the window? See you in a moment. Graham Potter's got a new job and he's got an injury crisis. Mikel Antonio, Jawed Bowen, Crescencio Somerville, Nicholas Fulkrug, all injured.
I wouldn't say imperative. Obviously, with the situation with Mick as well, there's certainly a logical rationale to do something. But again, it's not quite as simple as that.
You're being linked, obviously, with a number of players in the window. I know you won't talk names, but Evan Ferguson is a striker.
But you're going to ask me names.
You gave him his debut, and he's not played much. Could he fit the bill for you?
Well, again, he's a player that's not a West Ham player, and until he's a West Ham player, I won't speak about anybody. We've got enough good players here, and they're my focus at the moment. Jeremy, nice try though.
And that applies to Dewsbury Hall as well.
It does.
One player who isn't yours, so I don't know what you might say about him, but one who is.
Nothing.
Okay, Marcus Rashford maybe has been linked with a move here.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Well, he's not giving us any names. Dharmesh, give us some names.
I mean, he was posed the names, a couple of them. Marcus Rashford, I think the information we have on that, yes, there's an interest, but they just want to be kept abreast of any developments with regard to Marcus Rashford. It looks a very difficult and unlikely deal to be done there. Evan Ferguson is the interesting one. As Jeremy Langdon posed to Graham Potter, he actually gave Evan Ferguson his debut. The issue at the moment is Evan Ferguson's out injured just now. He's going to be out for a few more weeks. And Danny Welbeck has just returned from injury. João Pedro, we don't know when he's going to return. I just wonder if both Welbeck and Pedro are fit by the end of the transfer window, whether Brighton might consider Evan Ferguson getting more regular first-team football and whether West Ham are still in for him. The other name that they're interested in is the Nottingham Forest striker, Taiwo Awoniyi. Now, there's been no official approach or offer yet, but he started just 2 Premier League games this season. He's got a contract until 2027. And as you saw from Graham Potter there, because of all these injuries, he says it would be logical for West Ham United to go into the market to try and bring in a striker.
James, I want to talk Everton with you. David Moyes obviously got the job. Surely he took the job with some sort of understanding he'd be able to get some players in. Is that your understanding?
You'd expect that to be the case when a new manager comes in, but we know Everton's issues in terms of PSR. But we do know they are interested in winger. Goal scoring's been the big thing that they've got to try and rectify, and David Moyes got to come in and try and do that. They've really been struggling in front of goal. I think 15 goals only in the Premier League. Leon winger Ernest Nuama, as pronounced that right, is someone they were interested in the summer. That could be a potential deal that they might be looking to make, but it's going to be really tricky for them in this window. But you can imagine David Moyes has been given some assurances that there's something there to improve the squad, whether on a permanent or whether on a loan deal.
James Green, Transfer Show debut. Thank you very much, Dharmesh Sheth. I won't say old hand, senior experienced hand, Dharmesh Sheth. That's all from the Transfer Show today. We are back tomorrow, of course, at 5 and 7. And now, coming up on Sky Sports News, much more on Tyson Fury, who says he's done with boxing. But is he?